I was consumed by an unrelenting sickness, a torment that seemed to sap every last ounce of life from my body. When they finally freed me from my restraints and allowed me to sit up, my senses began to unravel. The words of my sentence, that dreadful death sentence, were the last thing I heard before my mind started to disconnect from reality. The voices of the inquisitors blended together in a maddening hum, a sound that seemed to reverberate deep within my soul, echoing the cold, mechanical rhythm of a distant engine. For a moment my vision was heightened, and I could see the lips of the black-robed judges with an unnatural clarity. They were deathly pale, their skin stretched taut over their skeletal faces like the thin, translucent pages of an ancient book. The words they spoke were laced with an unspeakable malevolence, each syllable a subtle, calculated cruelty designed to shred my sanity. I watched in horror as they mouthed my name, their lips twisting into grotesque, inhuman shapes, but no sound emerged. It was as if they were taunting me, toying with my fragile mental state, like a predator plays with its prey. The walls of the room seemed to undulate, a slow wave motion that made my stomach lurch with a creeping sense of dread. I felt my mind slipping, plummeting down a dark, endless well. And I knew I was staring into the abyss. The candles on the table loomed before me like specters, their flames dancing in a macabre rhythm, casting flickering shadows on the walls that seemed to pulse with a malignant life of their own. As my vision began to fade, I caught myself thinking about the peace that lay in the grave, the stillness and the quiet and the end of all suffering. It was a fleeting thought, a desperate longing that it vanished as quickly as it appeared. My world contracted, collapsing into a tiny pinprick of darkness, and then everything went black. When I came to, I was disoriented, unsure of what had happened or where I was. My memories were hazy, fragmented, and I couldn't shake the feeling that I'd lost something essential, something vital to my sense of self. I tried to piece together the events leading up to my current state, but my mind refused to cooperate, stubbornly clinging to the shadows, unwilling to confront the horrors that lurked within. As I struggled to regain my composure, I began to experience strange, disjointed flashbacks, eerie, half remembered visions that just seemed to sear themselves into my brain like a branding iron. I recall being carried by unseen hands, descending into a darkness so profound it seemed to have physical presence, a palpable, crushing weight that threatened to consume me whole. I remember the sensation of being suspended, weightless, in a void that seemed to stretch on forever, a desolate, featureless expanse that filled me with an existential terror. When I finally gathered the courage to open my eyes, I was met with an inky blackness that seemed to swallow me whole. I lay still, paralyzed by fear, my heart racing like a jackrabbit as I strained to hear any sound, any indication of where I was or what was happening to me. The silence was oppressive, a physical presence that pressed down upon me, making it hard to breathe. With a surge of adrenaline, I forced myself to move, to explore my surroundings and understand the nature of my confinement. My hands trembled as I felt my way through the darkness, my fingertips tracing the rough, damp stone of the wall, the cold, unforgiving surface that seemed to radiate a malevolent energy. I stumbled, fell, and lay there, my mind reeling with the implications of my situation. As I struggled to come to terms with my fate, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being toyed with, that my captors were playing a twisted game of cat and mouse with me. The food and water that appeared beside me seemed like a cruel joke, a sadistic gesture designed to prolong my suffering. I ate and drank, driven by a primal fear to survive, but my mind was racing with questions, with fears, with doubts. The wall seemed to stretch on forever, a monotonous, featureless expanse that threatened to drive me mad. I marked my progress with a torn piece of fabric, a makeshift breadcrumb trail that I hoped would lead me back to the starting point, but the darkness seemed to wrap and distort my sense of space, making it impossible to navigate. And then I stumbled upon the pit. The ground gave way beneath me. I found myself teetering on the edge of a seemingly bottomless abyss, a void that seemed to yawn open like a hungry mouth, eager to swallow me whole. The sound of dripping water echoed up from the depths, a slow, mournful cadence that seemed to mock me, to taunt me with the inevitability of my fate. In that moment, I knew I had to escape, to find a way out of this living nightmare. No matter the cost, I scrambled back from the edge, my heart racing with fear, and began to explore the perimeter of the dungeon, desperate to find a weakness, a flaw in the stone, a glimmer of hope in the darkness. As I stumbled through the blackness, I realized that my only solace was my own mind, my own thoughts, and my own will to survive. I clung to them, to the memories of my past, to the hopes of my future, to the determination that buried within me a fierce, unyielding flame that refused to be extinguished. I knew that as long as I held on to these things, I would never truly be defeated.